on as well. And as always, head coach David Quinn will answer your questions on Twitter. And we seem to find a new thing out every week. So I'm excited to see what this show leads to as well. But coach, first, we're getting a little bit more clarity on the return to play plan. There's at least dates in place. In fact, if you looked at the NHL's plan that they proposed, that all of the health and safety protocols, it's a very thorough and in-depth piece of literature. So do you take peace in knowing that at least there is, I should say, a very strict set plan in place for just this whole return to play?
Yeah, one of the things I think that's happening is more clarity on how this is going to play out. And, the NHL and the Players Association has put in a lot of work. I give these guys a lot of credit because this is not an easy time for anybody in life. And to be able to hopefully pull this off, I think our league and our Players Association deserve a lot of credit for making this happen.
Quinny, you recently found out that your hub city is going to be Toronto, my hometown. And I'm sure you're happy that it's on the East Coast and you're not switching time zones and all of that. What was your reaction when you heard it was Toronto?
I was happy, Valley, that we were staying east and had a shorter trip to where we were ending up eventually. And you're talking about one of the great cities. Toronto's a great city. It's a hockey mecca. There'll be certainly plenty of rinks to lend to the 12 teams that are going to be there. And we're all happy as an organization that we were going to stay on the East Coast and end up in Toronto.
And Quinny, you guys are going to be locked down. It's not like you're going to be going around and seeing the sights. I just wonder from your perspective, is that really any different? Because when I get asked about that, I tell people all the time, yeah, I've been all over the world, but I've been on airplanes, and then we go to restaurants, then we go to the rink, and then we go home. Like, there's not a lot of that anyway. So do you think you're really going to miss anything during the period of play?
I really don't. I just think human nature kicks in when people think, oh, we can't do something, right, even though you probably aren't going to do it. The fact that someone's telling you can't do it,
right,
may irritate you a little bit. So I don't think I don't think anything is going to change in a lot of ways with the fact that we are going to be in a quote unquote bubble. So, I think the league's going to do a really good job of, making this a business opportunity for everybody, a chance to win a Stanley Cup, but also there's going to be a little bit of balance and having a little bit of breathing room. But I think our guys are going to be fine. I think most of the players in the league aren't going to be bothered by the bubble.
And just reading the highlights of this return to play plan, I was really impressed, as you mentioned, Coach, that they do seem to have really taken the time to think out scenarios. Okay, what if X happens? What would be the contingency plan? What if Y happens? What's the contingency plan? If someone leaves the bubble, what are their responsibilities coming back? When you look at all of the different leagues and how they've each proposed their plans, I think this one really has a chance to be successful.
Yes, I think so too. And I think people throughout, the sports world feel that too. And I know I've read a few things where people think that if there's a league that has a chance to pull this off, it is the National Hockey League. And, maybe because we're in Canada where, the disease has not affected that country as much as it has in the United States, I think that may play a role in the whole situation. So, like I said, I think the league and the Players Association deserve an awful lot of credit to putting us into this position that we're in.
Last week, you mentioned the importance of having the pulse of the team. And, we hear that term being thrown around a lot. Coaches like to say that. But for you personally, I want you to elaborate more on what that means and how that translates day to day.
Well, now more than ever, I think it's more important just because this is such a unique situation with the guys having limited opportunity to work out. We as a staff, as an organization, have to know where guys are from a conditioning standpoint. And we've been playing in practice and, for at least the first 10 days, a schedule where we think is going to put ourselves in the best position, A, to be in the best shape possible, and B, not put anybody in a position where they're going to get hurt. So, having the pulse of your team, not only mentally, but physically right now is probably as important as it has ever been. And, we're constantly talking to Rammer and Jamie Rodriguez, our strength coach, because obviously they have access to these guys. We don't. And we're getting a pretty good feel of where a guy's at, the varying levels of conditioning and what guys are ready for when we do start practice.
As a coach, how it takes to typically understand a player and how they need to be coached. We're all different. We're not all coached the same. I had one instance with one coach where I was called in before the season, Quinny, and I knew my role as a backup. Like, I knew it. You didn't have to explain it to me. You said, Steve, you're going to play the games we don't think we can win, and you're also going to continue to play if you're getting beat up because we can't risk our starter. And I'm like, I already knew my role. Now I don't feel a part of the – and it wasn't really the best way to approach me because I was a team-orientated guy, and I accepted my role. I was always happy to play. What do you think about the length of time it takes to get to know somebody? Because this was early on in my relationship with this particular coach.
Yeah, I mean, it does take time to know anybody. And I think as you go along throughout a season, I think you adapt how you handle players. And, you know, you're not going to handle everybody the right way. You make plenty of mistakes along the way. But I think through that, as a coach, you have to be cognizant of the fact of the mistakes you make in building a relationship with a player and understanding how to coach somebody. And I think that's a pivotal part in being a successful coach. So, you know, that's a feeling out process. Obviously, at this level, you can, especially with guys that have been in the league, you do your homework, talk to other coaches that have had players before, ask them what's the best way to motivate them or handle them to get the best out of them. So it does, you know, there are things you can do before you actually start your relationship with a player to put yourself in a position to manage the player in a proper way.
Just on that point, Coach, you know, something you said a couple of weeks ago that stood out to me was your approach specifically with, you know, whether it be talking to certain guys while they're lifting weights, or maybe on the ice coming up and skating next to a guy, getting a few words in, or if you have a player going into your office, I remember you said maybe sometimes sitting on the couch so that you're not intimidating him from sitting behind your desk. When social distancing gets thrown all into this and in these new protocols where everyone is a little, you know, nervous to be around each other, does your approach change at all? Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, I think I got to stay 6 feet away from him apparently and wear a mask. So that's
have to carry like a ruler or something.
You know, the term "getting in a player's face" isn't going to be applicable here. So obviously, you know, we're going to have guidelines to what we can or can't do. The good news is obviously we're going to be tested daily once we get there. So I think there is going to be, you might be able to have the ability to have the normal approach in how you coach your players. But you know, the world's changed, and regardless of what the rules the NHL implements of what you can or can't do, you have to be aware of the situation and the severity of this disease.
But Quinn, are you hearing that the coaches are going to be wearing masks during practice as well as behind the bench during games?
I have not heard that we have to wear masks yet. No.
Okay. Yeah, that would be difficult. How you
that would be difficult.
Yeah. You got to yell at these guys. You got to get them
moving. Exactly. I would love it. They would like them to tape my mouth, let alone put a mask.
Welcome back to Home Ice with David Quinn. I'm Michelle Gingras, and Rangers defenseman Tony DeAngelo took his game to another level this season. The 24-year-old finished tied for fourth in the NHL in points for a defenseman with 53. But as Coach Quinn tells us now, he didn't just blossom on the offensive end. As we head into the Rangers film room, orchestrated by Lenovo and CDW, people who get it.
Everybody obviously knows about Tony's offensive ability, being the fourth leading defenseman scorer in the National Hockey League. But one of the things I want to highlight today is how much better he's gotten defensively. These first few clips you're going to see are his gap control. Vancouver does a good job coming out, but Tony does a really good job gapping up, forcing Vancouver to dump it in, and they don't get anything off the rush. Same thing here in Minnesota. Another good gap. Tony gaps up, widens out, forces a turnover, and then that pass right there. You know, one of the things Tony does so well, he finds the middle of the rink, unlike anybody else that I've coached, really, and it really allows us with great transition. Again, some real good D-zone play by Tony, patient, protecting the middle, great stick, forces a play up the wall, causes a turnover, and starts our breakout again. You know, that's hard to do. Not a lot of defensemen can do that. Another good gap, puck gets dumped in, shoulder checks, and a great pass here to Quickie, and away we go. We spend less time on our end because of the way Tony gets us out of our end. And who can forget this night? First goal against Jersey at home, power play goal. Jersey's getting their guy back. We got a short 5-on-3. We establish the offensive zone. Great pass by Mika. Tony takes a quick shot to get his first of the night. And the one that we all remember, the one that certainly was a special night for Tony and all of his teammates and the staff. We get a 5-on-3. We execute it perfectly. Great screen by Kreider. We move it around, and Tony finds that top shelf for his third goal of the night and a hat trick, which doesn't happen very often for an NHL defenseman.
Now back with Steve Valiquette and Rangers head coach David Quinn, and we also welcome in Rangers assistant coach David Oliver. And Coach, anyone who follows the Rangers knows that you two are pretty inseparable during the season. You know, you carpool together to the training center every day. So Ollie, I'm curious, how much do you miss that quality time, and are you excited to start having it back again?
It's pretty awesome to be back. It was a long 3.5 months. We had a good thing going here, and obviously Quinny and I, we have some good times together. Last few days, he's been annoying me like crazy on the golf course. Way too many birdies. It's time to play hockey again.
Totally.
This guy's not missing any putts, and it's driving me nuts.
He's in the zone. He's focused. He knows that the season is rapidly approaching again. But that ride, probably is pretty good for both of you to have that, to decompress, to kind of chat through ideas together and discuss just how you're going to approach practice. Did you feel like it was nice to kind of just have that ride to be a sounding board for one another?
I think absolutely. I mean, obviously, coming into our second year, there's a little bit more of a comfort level as far as what we wanted to do and what we implemented and the buy-in from the guys, and just to be able to throw ideas off each other and kind of dig back to our Lake Erie days together and some of the things that worked. It's funny how much that comes up in the car rides on the way to the rinks. So, and it's fun to see our guys grow and have fun doing what we love to do.
Ollie, you had a big-time career. You scored 20 in the NHL. You were a huge scorer in the minor leagues, and I remember stoning you on one weekend in Utah. I'm not sure if you remember that. I had to dwell on it twice. But what I want to talk to you about is Tony DeAngelo, because I've always heard you either have to have character or be a character. He has both, and that probably makes him such a memorable player. What can you say about his game and how it's changed?
Oh, just the maturity process for him and where he's come from just in our short 2 years that we've been here. It's just been incredible. That's on the ice, off the ice, how he's working with his teammates, loved by all of his teammates. And you know what? He sticks up for everybody out there. He's willing to do the dirty stuff. He'll fight guys. He's the quarterback of our power play. So, you know what? The sky's the limit for him right now. And he's just kind of running with it. It's been real fun to watch.
And Coach Quinn, for you actually mentioned before, that sometimes you send Tony in to be for lack of better words, a tone setter. How does his personality specifically just fit in with this overall dynamic of the team?
Well, like Ollie just said, I mean, Tony's got a dynamic personality. He's a very likable guy. He's got a way of unifying people. He's very protective of his teammates. What you see on the ice with that flair and the way he plays the game is a very similar way he approaches his life off the ice as well. And, it's important to have people with personalities, and nobody's got a bigger personality than Tony.
Also, how important is it to, as you just mentioned, to have that authenticity? Who you are on the court or on the ice is also who you'd be in real life. He's not trying to be anything that he's not. Yeah,
I think there's a definite crossover in our sport in particular to, your personality and how it affects how you play. You usually play to your personality, and Tony certainly does that. And when you've got his type of personality, he has swagger. He's very confident in the way he plays this game, and he should be. I mean, you're talking about one of the more talented defensemen in the National Hockey League. And, it was, as Ali said, it's been a lot of fun to watch, him break out and, use the skills and take advantage of his hockey sense and all the things that he brings to the table, and watch him blossom to the player that he is today.
I was on the bus once in the minor leagues and playing for John Brophy guys. And we're on the bus going to a roller rink in West Virginia in the East Coast League for hockey practice. And Brophy leans over and he says, "Hey, Valley, so close to the NHL, you can almost taste it, huh?" And, I look at your career, Ollie, and it's really neat how you've been everywhere. And now you end up in New York, coaching and playing. You've been in hockey a long time. Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes just knowing you're on the bench at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, it's kind of weird how that all happened. I mean, I always knew Quinny was going to be a head coach in the NHL. Just the short time we had together in Cleveland, I thought the world of him as a coach and the way he interacted with players. And I don't know how deep he can go into the conversations we had. I was working for the Avalanche at the time, and I was trying to help him find a good assistant coach. So how I ended up here, I do pinch myself. It's unbelievable. And to be here doing this at one of the teams that I played for back in the day, even though it wasn't here that long, it was a pretty cool experience with Mess and Gretz and Leachy and Graves and Richter and all those guys. It was like an all-star team for me when I came in here. I was in awe more than anything when I was sitting on that bench, and kind of hard to believe I was there. And, last year, my first year in the NHL as a coach, it was kind of that same feeling. It was like I was in awe of the players and how good they are. the speed of the game. And there's not a day goes by that I don't pinch myself, and very grateful for my friendship with Quinny and how the past both led us both here.
Just to elaborate on that, that relationship that you guys have had, that trust that you've had, both of you entering your first 2 seasons in the NHL, did you find that you leaned on each other in different ways? And I actually have a specific example. Coach Quinn last week talked about you in the Rangers film room. He gave you a little shout out because you made an adjustment early on in a game against the Islanders on the power play, which led to a late power play goal. So to have that trust in one another and to trust you in real time to make those decisions, that's got to come from just this relationship that you've developed.
Well, I think we've shared similar ideas since day one, right, Quinny, on how the game should be played, and from the way you treat players to the systems you want to run. And that's what made it such an easy fit for me to say, yes, I do this job with them. I mean, I told my wife there's only one person I would ever do this for, and that's Dave Quinn. So it's kind of a blessing that this opportunity came along, and the whole trust factor. I mean, that's just time on buses, time in the room, watching video, doing all the things that we do every day just to kind of understand what we both want. And we both speak the same language. So it's been a real easy transition, even though we were apart for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I don't even, time flies. I don't even know how long it was.
We want to have a little bit of fun here since we are still in this just, kind of just time before practice really gets revved up. So we were curious. Hockey obviously is a world of nicknames. In no other sport that I've ever covered have so many players had nicknames. And it seems like in most cases, they just chop off the second half of your last name and add an IE or a Y. But there's a couple different ones. Obviously, you're Ollie, and Coach Quinn sometimes is referred to as Quinny, and Valley is Valley, or Steve Valiquette. But Jesper Fast is Quickie, and Brendan Lemieux is Pep. So I was hoping maybe Coach Quinn, you could explain why those were those guys' nicknames.
Well, with Jesper Fast, obviously he plays a fast game, and they just, when I got here, everybody was calling him Quickie, so I jumped on board and started calling him Quickie as well. So that was an easy one. Pepe Lemieux, obviously Pepe, Brendan Lemieux stole his father's nickname when he was a player, so that was an easy one. I'm trying to think of others. I don't know if we have many other nicknames like that. It's pretty much your status quo of nicknames in the National Hockey League with the Ys, or the ERs, Stromer.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So we really don't have I can't think of anybody else's name other than the IE or the ER that's thrown at the end of their name from our end of it.
It's a struggle, though, when you get away from the game, guys. I can tell you firsthand is the first year while I was working on the media side, we were calling a game against Arizona, and I mispronounced Lori Korpakowski's name, right? And I played with him for 2 years because I never called him Korpakowski. I called him Corpy. It was like, Corpy, pass me a gator. Corpy, I need a roll of black. So that part of it, I think, is frustrating, guys. I mean, you guys, do you have hard time in the civilian life? Do you have to ask people their nicknames? Like, how do you want me to refer to you? I have that problem in my neighborhood too.
Yeah, you're dead on. It is different in the real world. I mean, you're so used to calling people, I would bet some guys don't even know guys' first names.
I know.
I mean, I remember when I was at BU, we had our goalie coach had a nickname, and one of our players, when I actually mentioned his full name in November after he had been working with the guy for 3 months, he said, "Who's that?" I said, "He's our goalie coach." You've actually been around for 3 months. He didn't know his full name. So I do think there is a little bit of that when you get in the civilian life, that you kind of, they don't go by the same name rules in the real world.
But you ask permission, right, Michelle? It's a good thing.
Yeah, Michelle. I was just going to say, you're the head coach and assistant coach of the team. I am inclined to call you coach, but I'm tempted to call you Quinny and Ollie because it's just part of that whole, hockey in general. You kind of just have that. It's so relationship focused, and it makes perfect sense to me why you would refer to guys in that, fondly by their nicknames. It just kind of fits with the whole familial feel of the sport.
Yeah, well, it's funny for me. I mean, Ollie probably runs into this. People call you coach. And I know wherever if I go in a restaurant or if I go on the golf course, hey, coach, how you doing? I bet half the people don't know my real name. They just know me as coach. I'm pretty easy to say hello to. So, half the people that are saying hi, I don't even really know their names, but they know coach. I mean, and they probably don't know mine either. So it is different for sure.
Are there any, you kind of alluded to it earlier, Coach, but any nicknames in history that really stood out to you? Just a funny nickname, or maybe some guy did something and because of his reputation, he developed a certain nickname, or is there any story like that?
Yeah, obviously mine's Quinny, but when I was a sophomore at Kent, I left home for the first time at the age of 15. I didn't know anybody at the school. I check into my dorm room. My roommate was coming the next day. I leave my dorm room. I walk across campus, and all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, barrel butt." And I was 6 feet, 215 pounds at 15, and hanging out a window of one of the dorms is this kid, Joey McMahon, who was a senior. He was 4 years older than me, and I knew the name. He and I had never met, and that was my greeting. And unfortunately, that was my nickname throughout prep school.
That one stuck.
That one stuck.
You had another one. You told me it.
What?
You told me it the one day we were working out at a Lifetime somewhere. And I was running on the treadmill. I never run, but he's running on the treadmill. So I jump on the treadmill beside him. And then the next thing you know, there's sweat flying everywhere. It was gross. There was sweat just flying everywhere. So I had to get off, and I moved like 5 treadmills down. And I'm like, when he got done the workout, I was like, what is that all about? He's like, I sweat a lot. He's like, when I was in high school, they used to call me the gazelle-elephant. I was huge, but I could run like the wind.
That's
that
awesome.
was one too.
Ollie, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time today. We really loved having you.
Thank you. It was fun, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Home Ice with David Quinn. Michelle Gingras alongside Steve Valiquette and Rangers head coach David Quinn. And like we do each week, it's time to head to Twitter to get your questions answered. And you never know what you're going to find out. Last week we found out that Coach loves M&M. It's his inspiration when he's on the treadmill or whatever it may be. So let's see what we can find out this week. To kick things off, Natalina Brea, NYR, wants to know, if you could trade places with one of your players for a day, who would it be and why?
How can it not be Hank Lundqvist? I mean, really?
Yeah.
I'm waiting something good to happen to Hank, right? Like, seriously. Hall of Fame career, movie star, good looks, all the money in the world, fabulous family. Maybe something good will happen to him sooner or later.
Then you can find out what barber he uses, and you can find a few more details that we can follow, especially where he shops for clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
So mine here, Quinny, is from @ignition_hockey. What is your all-time favorite atmosphere that you've ever coached in?
I'm gonna have to say, Madison Square Garden to me is just so special, and our fans are so passionate. The arena's so special. It's Madison Square Garden. It's just an incredible place to play, whether you're a visitor or standing behind the home bench. To me, it's all about Madison Square Garden, just for so many reasons.
I can imagine how much nerve you had the first home game. I can imagine. It was,
I don't know if I was nervous. I was just really I made a point to say to myself, soak this all in. It was really a surreal night.
Can that sometimes help calm your nerves? I know before, I do a big broadcast, I try to just enjoy the moment a little bit, and it sometimes just allows you to be centered on what's going on and not let yourself kind of get too much in your own head.
Yeah, that certainly helps. But funny thing about coaching, once the game starts, you really lose if you are nervous or if you're anxious or any of those things, it's amazing how quickly you get right into coach mode, and you change your lines, you're paying attention to what the other team's doing, things like that. So it doesn't last very long. You really get thrown into the pace of the game and your responsibilities within the game.
All right, that'll do it for us this week. We'll see you right here next week when Home Ice with David Quinn returns.